And let us open our next session, which is the scale effects, and we will compare different scale cities. We will structure our work in the following way. The High School of Urban Studies under the High School of Economics has been delivered recently, joint with the Novaya Zemlya company. Sabina Maslova, representing Novaya Zemlya, will present the results of the survey. Then we will have a discussion headed by Stanislav Mishmarov, head of Chelyabinsk city, which is high rated in accordance with the study. The next speaker is Mr. Parshuto, the first deputy mayor of Tomsk. Later, I hope that Anatoly Lokots, the mayor of Novosibirsk, will join in. We also have several experts participating. This is Alexander Puzanov, the CEO of the Urban Economy Institute, which is a foundation. Also, it will be Tatiana Bachkareva, representing Urbex Razvitие company, and probably Alexei Vedev will also participate in the discussion. I would like first to give the floor to the experts that conducted the survey, then to other aspects, and afterwards we will open the floor for a discussion. What is the heart of the matter here? We will talk about different models of cities with different numbers of population. And we will talk about the sizes of cities, whether they play some role and have some effects on the city life or not. And I'm sure to raise this question. So first, let me give the floor to Sabina Maslova. She represents Novaya Zemlya company. Thank you, Natalia, for your introduction. Dear colleagues, let me brief you, and finally I have some slides, on this survey conducted by the Higher School of Urban Studies jointly with Novaya Zemlya company, the main concept of this study is the index of the human potential. As time goes by, it becomes evident that the quality of life is defined not so much by the volume of production, but everything depends on the residents of a city. In late 20th century, there were some researches on the subject. I could give one example. It's, for instance, the index of human capital or potential, which was introduced by the UN. It has been used for 20 years to compare different countries. It incorporates three components, which is the level of literacy, life expectancy, and the quality of well-being. We have covered 63 cities in our survey. And first, we have identified three main blocks to calculate this indicator, which is education, well-being, and health. However, each block, in order to calculate the indices and indicate it, we needed statistics owned by governmental agencies. and the municipalities did not have enough statistics, and they offered rather a narrow range of indicators. It was not quite representative. We chose the figures for the year 2011. We used many indices to calculate the index. The first range of indices described the educational block. For instance, it's the number of students per 1,000 residents. We wanted to deliver not only quantitative but also qualitative assessment. That's why we applied some other parameters. For instance, it's the average score gained by the school leavers during the unified state exam on leaving school. And this is important to characterize the educational block. As to the healthcare sector, we applied here two indicators. The first one showed the quality and efficiency of the healthcare sector, which is the index of infant mortality. While the second one is very important for the human potential in general, which is the general mortality index. Well, the third block was characterized mainly by the average salary in the city. This is an important index, and we wanted to equalize the discrepancies in the difference between salaries and to define some average figure. We used all this data to define our set of indicators and indices. Well, quite often, bigger cities with larger population have many advantages over smaller cities. And this happens irrespective of their performance indicators. This is called the low base effect. It means that relative notions distort the whole picture because they increase the overall picture. And that's why we have divided the whole population into several strata. And later on, in order to eliminate these differences and discrepancies, we calculated the indices for each particular stratum. The first group included the cities with the population of about 1 million people. The second group included smaller cities with the population from 500,000 up to 700,000 people. And the third group included relatively small cities. We carried out our measurements and calculated the indices for each particular group. And within each group, we identified the high-rated and low-rated cities. Eventually, we obtained the following picture. There were 15 leaders among all cities and 14 outsiders. The expected leaders were Yekaterinburg, Kazan, Novosibirsk, and some other cities. However, interestingly, there were smaller cities in this group too, like Tomsk, Tyumen, Belgorod, and Cheboksary. Thus, we can see that the cities of different sizes have comparable level of the human potential?
It depends on indicators and the whole system of them. There are cities in which the contribution of each indicator are even and balanced. However, there are cities which are prominent, judging by one or two indicators. However, the results show that this is confirmed by the survey done within the framework of this work. But in balanced cities, cities with a balanced structure, our citizens are more satisfied with urban environment and the quality of medicine and education. They are more satisfied with their salaries. Also, this is confirmed on the birth growth rate. 87 cities, leaders in human potential, in the past decade demonstrated positive growth of the birth rate. However, with outsiders, the positive dynamics were observed only in 21% of the cities. This way, the development of human potential should become one of the priorities in the work of urban administration. It would be interesting to understand why these cities achieved a high level of human potential. Part of them were relying on different education, on different indicators, education, medicine, etc. Some of them are trying to develop the level of economy. Others are interested in engineering, infrastructure, urban environment. There is no unique recipe as to how this can be achieved. Each city chooses its own method. In spite of traditional combination of resources and population based on central hierarchical model, the cities of different sizes can compete based on human potential and can compete for people. And it would be interesting to know how they manage to do it, what exactly helps them. Natalia Vasilievna, the floor is yours. Thank you for your presentation. Our ratings are all important. However, I don't think people in this audience over-exaggerate them. Actually, what you invest, what you get. That's why there are a lot of ratings, and it's interesting to hear about this work. But let's listen that it's just, let's think that it's just a beginning. To continue the previous session in Audience C, we are moving forward, discussing a block of 3 questions. I would like representatives of executive authorities to respond to it in a comfortable format. However, 7 minutes for presentation is too little. The whole block on these topics. Do you have a feeling that in your city there is a clear priority and models or development, or does it just go by itself? You have given a task and you have received a response. Or do you have integrities and priorities? Do you have effective models of urban development? And you can see competition. If you have such priorities, is it your own invention, or can you scale it Do you have something that allows others to use this experience? Another tough question, effective use of resources. All of us know about the local budgets. Nobody has any illusions. How do you manage, and do you manage under the circumstances, to use budget funds efficiently? You understand that you can't cut everything. What areas of urban development, what projects do you concentrate on? Priorities are words. Money is real. Under what circumstances integration of resources, of money and business can be used jointly? The third block. Who are your friends? Who are the drivers of urban development? And what groups of people, whom do you rely on in urban development? Can you rely on them now when we are approaching an unfavorable period of development? Whom should you rely on in groups of population and certain types of business? Also, attraction of citizens. Do you have formulated priorities in migration policy? Whom are you prepared to attract? Or do you have no policy, which is quite possible as well? We have 4 groups of questions, and I would like to begin the discussion of this question. And the first to speak, head of Chelyabinsk, Stanislav Masharov. I will start answering the questions. So, about integrity and priorities. Of course, we have such a strategy, and today this strategy is being developed within the framework of development together with the region. We can't do without it. Besides, Chelyabinsk region is a pilot project conducted within the framework of the Ministry of Regions, the project of Chelyabinsk agglomeration. A concept has been written for the city and 7 adjacent territories. It's just a concept. A complex investment plan will be the basis for 7 municipal units, which are 1-hour drive away from the city. Easy access from the center to these municipal units. They belong to Chelyabinsk agglomeration, and the strategy will be the basis for their development. Speaking about integrity, about efficiency of using funds. Of course, we're saying everywhere that municipal authorities are underfinanced, and our example is quite typical for other 1 million cities with 1 million population. Only 50% form the budget of Chelyabinsk city. Today, we're forming the budget for the next year, and I can tell you that unfortunately, this is a very tough budget with big deficit. Today, we are carrying out a municipal reform, and after the election, we have internal municipal units, and there we form separate budgets. We hope that with the help of district councils, that exist today and deputies of district councils. An effective model for spending budget funds will be formed. Those districts will have their budgets, and they will form the city budget through their delegated deputies. I would like to discuss this issue in detail, the sphere of integration of interests of business and municipal authorities. We have positive experience today on interaction with business in the sphere of energy efficiency projects. And this is the most effective sphere where business can be involved within the framework of PPP, and we have a lot of energy efficiency projects, contracts signed by municipal units within the framework of energy efficiency. Private business invests funds, municipal authorities economize on the budget, and all these conditions are determined at the beginning of this process. Children's schools, educational institutions, arts and culture schools are all working within the framework of agency efficiency contracts. The business and budget are both interested in this topic. I think I have answered these questions. In terms of migration, our city needs qualified personnel, and this way we kind of insult neighboring cities. We have developed a program on the support of doctors of narrow specialities, and we offer the following variant. We pay money for these to attract these people, about 100,000 people. We provide accommodation and also pay them more while they're working. However, the contract has the term of validity of 5 years. This way, many neighboring cities were deprived of these doctors of narrow specialities. Let's ask questions at the end, and now the floor is given to Evgeny Valerianovich Parshuta, first deputy mayor of Tomsk. Thank you, Natalia, for inviting me. I know that you know Tomsk well. We often see you at Skype conferences. Through TV channel 2. I'm not going to answer all the questions you have asked. There are a great number of strategies, federal, municipal level. Few people understand them, especially when they are added together and you have the whole picture. Even specialists may fail to understand. So we hope for support, but it's almost impossible. In Tomsk, there is a big program in Tomsk 2020. It used to be strategic, now it's tactical, because only 5 years have remained till its finalization. And we are speaking of this program as the beginning of the development of Tomsk and Tomsk agglomeration. On the level of, on municipal level, we have developed a medium-term program for 5 years. interaction with leaders of city community. We're trying to involve people who can do it or who are willing to do it and who can add to the municipal program something interesting that would be interesting to implement, not against citizens, but together with citizens. Unfortunately, many urban programs, when planned by officials, only do harm. And this is a horizontal program. It comprises 12 sections, simple things: public space, public transport, engineering space, security, many areas, many questions that we ask every day. The number of requests from citizens is 100,000 a year. Each citizen has written one letter to the administration in order to solve some problem. So these are the priorities. We think they are important for the city to consult citizens, decide, make a decision on main areas and implement them together. Now about the resources. All the mayors say that there are no resources. Even the mayor of Bangkok said that they have no resources. The same is true of Hong Kong and Singapore. Everybody will be saying the same. Municipal authorities do not have enough money for rational functioning. You need to look for this money from those who you are friendly with. It's not so easy to involve business. It isn't easy because prosecutor's office and investigation committees may get interested. So who are our friends? Small, medium-sized, and big business. There isn't much big business in Tomsk. Most oil business are beyond the boundaries of Tomsk. So our friends are former defense companies who have been transformed into different types of companies. Universities, we have 6 state-owned universities. These are specialists that later may become successful entrepreneurs. They're nice people to deal with. Also, there are non-business communities, different leadership teams, beginning with public organizations and up to territorial local authorities who are fortunately developing. This is a group of people you need to be friendly with. You can't do otherwise with a stable, consistent development. Migration policy. It's a difficult issue of a federal level. Of course, we have to respond. However, we don't have enough authority to deal with it. And Tomsk is quite lucky about it. Many people come to and become students here, so migration is nice. They don't come to build or clean the street. Yes, we have it, but a very small share. Most of the migrants are students, and so far we are satisfied with it. However, there is also a trend. Students came from different places, used to come from different places, and now the geography is much narrower. Now they come from Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and this is quite a different story, because here we have to deal with international relations, the problem of living in campuses, hostels, etc. There is some logics in it. Of course, the city has to deal with it. However, we are limited in our potentialities. Thank you very much. Now the floor is given to Anatoly Evgenievich Lokot, Mayor of Novosibirsk. This is our second site in which we are participating. I would like to deviate from the questions about scaling, about sizes. Is it important or not? Yes, it is. It is important. Do you remember the film Formulae of Love? I will send you to Siberia to clean the snow. All of it? Yes, all of it. I have seen it more than once. When snow falls in Moscow, the problem of cleaning the street starts. We started cleaning the snow in Novosibirsk in October. We are not so interested in the experience of Tel Aviv, Bangkok, Singapore. So if you haven't cleaned the snow in October, I'm not interested in talking with you. My colleagues will confirm that this problem exists, and this affects the work of our utilities companies. Yes, this is size, because it's not just one street. Human factor is definitely affected. All the problems can be solved. A person can have excellent work, have good speciality, and in the morning he wants to get to his office as soon as possible. But if he falls into the snow as he comes out of the house, you know he will be in a bad mood the whole day.
If so, he starts thinking about leaving for New Zealand, Israel, or other countries where this may never happen. What about our programs and priorities? Certainly we have them. Any manager would tell you that we have enough programs and priorities. Our programs are quite significant. The time is dynamic. It changes fast as well as priority. We have the general plan of Novosibirsk development. It was endorsed about 5 years ago, but now it's outdated because the city is changing as well as its infrastructure. Right now, we have constructed Bugrinsky Bridge, and even the presidents visited the commissioning procedure. But the construction has been completed, but in order to operate it, we need some additional infrastructure, like additional access roads, transit roads to the southwest, and other things. So the priorities keep changing. And let me quote 2 more examples. The second example covers yet another issue, which is the private and public partnership. There are some projects like that in Siberia, including Tomsk. The utilities, including power supply, providing houses to people, it's all the matters of survival, but not comfort. That's why we have several. We have a power generating company, plus 4 power plants. We have the infrastructure of pipes and so on. But so we have this whole infrastructure of utilities, which is required to supply the people with heat and with power, and to keep their houses in order. Right now, we have overcome many difficulties, and we have introduced the unified tariff for heat all over Novosibirsk. By the way, Novosibirsk is quite a big city in terms of size. It's one of the biggest cities in Russia. The second important issue I'd like to mention is the human factor. And let me continue the previous session. We started talking about young people, the competition of universities, and the competition for young specialists. What happens to a young person when he gets older and when he requires attention? This is when he becomes elderly, and the elderly population comprises quite a big part of the total population in Russia, including Novosibirsk. Therefore, we need a well-developed structure of social support. We have created 10 centers of social support already that working on demand. It means that someone can visit like a war veteran or, for instance, the relatives of an elderly person, or the relatives of a disabled person, or disabled people themselves. We also In addition to that, we have created specialized educational centers for children, for alternative children suffering from different diseases, like different syndromes, mentally challenged children, and so on. And we have created them in each district. They offer educational and development programs for special children. We are doing that in compliance with the draft federal law, which will come into force in the next year. So it's all aimed to increase the social support to people. We have been working on that for years, and this is a big problem. What about interaction? What about making friends and partners? We try to make friends with the representatives of small business and medium business. Currently, the construction in Novosibirsk is very dynamic and active. We have the best performance indicators among other municipalities. I think it's about 1,200,000 meters of social housing per year. This is our rate. But the social infrastructure goes behind that rate. I mean the day patient hospitals, medical centers, kindergartens, and so on. So it can't catch up with the rate of housing construction. We are trying, therefore, to find additional funds for this construction. One of the ways is co-financing. And this co-funding may be done in collaboration with small and medium business companies. I think this is our inevitable future, and this is very promising. This year we have constructed a road from Novosibirsk to the south, passing through the town called the scientific and research town, the so-called Akademgorodok. We have resolved the transportation problem, and a good problem, a good example of a road infrastructure. We have not exceeded the planned cost, and everything is okay. All these years, young people have been coming to our city. We receive many migrants from Middle Asia, including the Caucasus area and the far Caucasus area. That's why we have a flea market of the regional significance. So all problems we're facing now, all problems related to this flea market. Some changes in the migration policy have been planned for the coming year. We will be working on patents and other documents. We certainly stick to Russian legislation. Therefore, I can tell you that the people working for municipalities are facing numerous problems, all our workers' problems. But we're not complaining, and we try to resolve them by ourselves. Sometimes, though, we cooperate with the with the higher level administrative authority. Yes, I am here about your flea market. We will talk about flea markets today and tomorrow. And now let me give the floor to Mr. Puzanov, who is head of the CEO of the Institute of Urban Economics. Certainly, I would like to start with the size effects. What about the so-called size effects? What about the city power index? It's extremely difficult to differentiate one thing from the other. Many people think that this city power index is due to the size of a city. And there are many myths here. Many people think that many projects related to the urban sprawl will attract many investors as soon as the number of population reaches 1 million people. And so this is just a myth. What about strategies? Certainly, we are now in the situation when most of cities have formal strategic documents, but we are dissatisfied with them. Why do we need a strategy if any external circumstances may ruin it? We need to develop our strategies and general plans in a different way. General plans are often drafted in parallel to the strategy, social strategy, and they are not correlated. And only later on, managers discover that they have to change them. And so we need to change this system of drafting and the whole intelligence, the intellectual system, the way of thinking. We certainly need teamwork here, and many people think still that it is enough to comply with the regional and governmental strategies, but it's far from enough. So we need to consider so many other factors. Some people mentioned in the previous session that the cities are growing more expensive. We often impose extra burdens on the developers, and this makes housing more expensive and so on. And this is a vicious circle. We have found some solutions to the problem. Well, but let me first give you several figures. Recently, we conducted a survey of investment into the housing sector. The housing sector totals about 19% of the GDP globally. But let's look at the structure. 46% represents the current costs incurred by households and companies on the utilities. So the utilities cost about 46% of the total spendings. And also, let's look at the structure of all investment. The investment into new buildings and infrastructure totals 46% too, and only 8% is the investment into the housing fund, into the restoration, renovation, capital repairs, and the construction of new houses in the sites where old houses have been put down. It's often easier to find new construction sites somewhere in the outskirts than to build new houses in the place of old houses. But this is not a relevant solution. And right now, I think in some central cities, like in Siberia, there are some cities also in the Far East, with deteriorated housing fund. Besides, many people find their apartments and houses outdated, and many areas are used inefficiently, like the sites belonging to military structures and some other enterprises. According to our estimate, we can construct about 62% of all new houses can be built in the near future in the areas that are already occupied by unnecessary buildings and infrastructure. So if the local communities recognize this fact, they will be able to construct new houses without any unnecessary costs and efforts. I thank you for your presentation. I think it was extremely valuable. You have mentioned not only the aims, but also the risks, which is very important. And now let me give the floor to Tatiana Bочкарёва. She represents Urbex Развитие, an autonomous NGO. I represent a consulting company, and it specializes in regional and city development. To continue our discussion, let me focus on development issues. The main line of this forum is the human potential. And considering this fact, I think it's the development of, it's the basics, and this is the core of development. I think that any city has development potential, but we need to properly identify it and to involve it fully. Sometimes the cities with insignificant potential find a new way of development. What about the sizes of cities? The number of population is an important factor, which is recognized by all studies and surveys. It's always, but as to the potential, there are some other factors here. The second significant factor is the location.
And a number of other factors. So if we speak of development, we need to remember a whole complex of parameters that takes care of it. So when we speak of a model of development, it's rather a set expression which does not always underlie some sense, some meaning. If a place is unique, the ways of development could be different, and the models of development, well, it makes sense to speak of it when there are certain scalable models of development. Mostly, what has been said now is about painful places, but these are all issues of the current life of the city. Speaking of its development, we need to make use of this potential and see the strategic trend in the development of the city. Here, many strategies are on the shelf and they are not implemented. Why? Because the management system is not streamlined for implementing strategy. Strategic management is not organized. So I would like to tell you about an example which was successful. It is the last variant of development of Samara. We managed not only to develop strategies, but also to create a management system for the development, as well as interaction with community. It was conducted interactively, and all the members of the community participated. This way, a stable community was formed. Administration and not-for-profit organizations, 10 strategic areas were determined. Samara is now developing municipal programs and projects. I would like to add that human potential that has been formed, they call themselves professional citizens, and based on this group, social committees were formed and a relevant regulation was approved. Representatives of the administration are part of it, as well as business and community. Decisions are made by a majority vote. There's a whole system which allows numerous structures to discuss this situation on the implementation and promotion of the strategy. It's important that citizens see themselves as part of the city, and they are responsible for the past and the future of the city. And this way, they are in a position of a strategist. Until they occupy this position, they will take an active part in municipal programs and projects. A number of initiatives and projects were developed. A project session was held last week, and there all the initiative developments were discussed. This is a real project implementation within a strategy with the participation of different representatives of the community. It is not migration that matters. However, we don't always take into account the potential of those who have left the city but want to participate in the development of the city. We call them the development agents. It is a significant potential, human potential, that can be used to develop the city. Thank you. Thank you very much. And a big thank you to all the experts for sticking to the time limit. That allows us to have some time for questions and discussion. I will be happy to give you the floor. Monsieur, unfortunately, she is not speaking into the microphone. The microphone is switched off. Чтобы микрофон включили. Микрофон не включен. Микрофон у нее не включен. Let's collect the questions, and then a minute for each colleague, or a minute and a half. The things that you think most important. We are writing programs. What are the chances of implementing it? Am I correct in understanding? And a discussion, not just questions. Please introduce yourself. I'm Economies. I'm teacher of Perm University. Natalia has already been to Perm. My question is about migration. It so happened that Perm is generating, retaining, and repelling. We are generating. We have a university and a high school of economics. Unfortunately, we don't have the generation that Tomsk has. I always give my students the example of Tomsk, who educates brilliant specialists and generates migration balance. I would like to ask about Perm. Soon it may turn into a center which people will only stay in to get an education. Maybe you have some other programs on retaining the potential that you create in your higher educational institutions. I know that you have research institutes, but what do you think about the risk that people will start leaving? Here we have a question. Anna Beregovskisk, head of Planning Institute, Omsk. I will try to be brief. We have agreed at 2 sessions that it would be correct to develop, in accordance with strategy, general plans that would determine the size of housing, and programs should be developed, quality formulated in quantity through the standards of city planning. Then the balance of interests of authorities, community and business are balanced. It's a question to you, to mayors and deputy mayors. The assessment of the activities of the authorities is done through, say, square meters of housing. And square meters and other like beds and places, this is not done. If the system is further developed, the system of documents and solutions, and if monitoring is added to it for compliance with time and all the indicators through the standards of city planning, how would you assess your own activities? You wanted to ask a question. Who else? Two more people. Okay. Russian Heritage Institute. At the previous session, I asked a question, a similar one. You asked a question about friends. Are governors among your friends? And are the neighboring cities your friends? I have a feeling, after today's discussion, that if we look, I work in historical areas and UNESCO list of cities that developed because of due to heritage. It's a context of culture. I have a feeling that if there are cities in deserts, there are cities, such cities in UNESCO list, and if we have such cities, well, it will just in the middle of nowhere, just a forest, probably a pipe nearby. How shall we live? We won't have rural areas. In Europe, we say urban and rural, and we don't have anything, the concept of rural here, or maybe you could tell us about it. Yaroslav Kovalchuk, General Plan Institute, Moscow. I have a question about Tomsk. A few years ago, they developed an interesting strategy. Tomsk 2.0, 2020. What is its future? I think it's connected with the topic of our discussion because it's about human capital and development of culture, etc. Two questions here. Yelena Miller, professor, Southern University. It's a question about development and scaling of strategy between citizens and administration. A certain category of citizens appears. I would like to know who they are. Mayors speaking about interaction of private business and citizens. Is it proper to speak about this category when we discuss strategy? Who participates? Business, science, authorities, also public. How public works, I have seen and I can see because I'm a member of a public organization, and this form is quasi-effective. Can you explain how effective it is? Can we speak of institutionalization of the concept citizens? Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentations. Sergei Nikolaev, expert on innovations. The task is to form municipal innovative system of the economy of the city through human capital, and we saw that there are no basic capitals, concepts of human capitals and basic knowledge. These definitions are not used in public discussions or in the concept 2020. Maybe you have your own understanding of human capital and economy of knowledge. These are the stages of development, our near future. If you don't understand these things, it would be difficult to discuss heritage. Do you have this understanding or not? Dear colleagues, if you have no more questions, the list of questions is closed. Dear colleagues, I would like to ask you, we have 5 speakers, so please, 3 minutes for each. I would be very grateful. You can answer the questions which you think you should answer. Let's begin with the beginning. It's easier this way. So the first question, who should implement the long-term program for 70 years? General plans should be calculated for 70 years, then it will be a more strategic 5-year program. Everybody should implement it, all the communities in the city. And this is the answer to the last question. Authorities should take care of effective interaction as well as professional. For long-term programs, it is mostly for specialists to coordinate. They create a product and then they give it to the groups I have mentioned. There was a question on Tomsk on the risk of departure, that migrants will leave. Well, the main factors are salary, comfort, security. If you have special mortgage programs as well as comfort, well, municipal authorities do not have enough authority to do that. Adequate standards first, and then indicators of the performance. Today, it's a big problem. Built-in territories and free territories, all this should be done, however, very cautiously. Small cities in China, recently there was a program for the construction of cities of 50 million people. We have insufficient population, so with your scenario it will be very sad, and everything should be done for small towns to remain, and a lot needs to be done for that. Industrial companies should be built, and small business should be developed, and mayors should be sitting from cities with different populations, size of population. The Soviet power had such experience. In the 20s and 30s, they built 50 new cities. Citizens' public interaction. I mentioned about it in the first presentation. We think it's a cornerstone. Everybody who has leadership competences and can generate ideas and participate in their implementation are our friends. For Tomsk, the most important areas are business, science, and power. We try to follow classical principles. Hence this chain: universities, business incubators, industrial parks.
Will we be able to build the structures? Will we have effective cooperation? That's a big question. Thank you, but please stick to 3, maximum 4 minutes. What about programs? Let's get back to the question asked by my colleague. Well, we mainly have 3-year programs. They fit into the budget of the cities. What about a strategy? A strategy is something like a dream. So we identify some indicators jointly with the community, and these are our goals, which are meant for future generations. A strategy is not something fixed. It needs to be constantly updated. What about evaluating and monitoring authorities? Well, we first and foremost need standards. If we have standards, we will be able to efficiently assess them. So standards come first and foremost. What about friendship? Did you mention the friendship with the governor or with small cities? Well, we always need business partnership with the government. It's vital for our joint work. As to small cities, I have mentioned it already. The current urban sprawl process, which is underway in Chelyabinsk region now, covers 70 municipalities. It aims to properly distribute human and regional reserves, and in order to do that properly, we really need a development strategy. And we're talking now about the second or the third lines of changes. And it's related to infrastructure projects. So it all starts with industrial enterprises, and that was the first project. It concentrated on production, and the second project was already infrastructural, which joined the two cities participating in this project. I slightly misunderstood the first question asked. I mean the plans, and I'm often skeptical about plans and not sure who will execute them. I know that many people are after gigantic plans, like turning Siberian rivers into the opposite direction. Well, we certainly need some strategy for development, and we can't have any development without a strategy. As to young people, in order to retain young people, we probably need to guarantee 3 things to them. It's affordable houses, affordable education, and some affordable infrastructure. If we stick to that policy, we will have young people with us. As to the standards, well, you probably are not listening to me, but I quite agree with you. Currently, we are commissioning 9 new kindergartens here in Novosibirsk. and we are drafting the documents to build some more. I agree with you. We really need standards. It may be dangerous, and quality is very important. We need quality standards. We need not only quantity and the volume of construction, but we always need to trace quality of houses. Otherwise, we may lose buyers. And now, but we have a partnership of Siberian cities in Novosibirsk, and it covers four main biggest cities of Siberia: Tomsk, Novosibirsk, Irkutsk. And we often meet and we discuss the experience of both big and small cities. So we're not just wishing well, but we're doing a specific work. What about self-governing and self-management? I think in this respect we certainly can't do without self-management. We can't develop otherwise, and therefore we must develop the local community. The first step was to change the system of access to the building of administration. We have no security. Thus, we have eliminated the barrier between the administration and the population. Second, we try to have public hearings where we discuss the most topical issues and plans so that the residents actively participate in these discussions. They really behave actively, and we discuss many arguable and sore issues like building new schools or opening new sports grounds and so on. This movement in Novosibirsk is large scale. It is far from formal, and moreover, we are going to delegate more powers to the representatives of this community. So what about education or the economy of knowledge? We have reduced, the budget on education has been reduced. I personally and my team think that we must never reduce the funds allocated to education, including higher education and education at school. Currently, educational costs in the budget have been reduced by 50%. I'm sure that the investment into younger generation is the best investment ever. Thank you for your replies. And let me now pay another compliment to Novosibirsk on behalf of the expert community. Probably you hear Jane Jacques and these studies have been translated into Russia, and it was done at the expense of some Novosibirsk private companies and business. So thank you once again for doing this work. Let's answer the question, who are city residents? Well, city residents are the people residing in the big cities and possessing the knowledge of life there. For instance, they know everything about parking spaces, the location of houses, and so on. We really must work with city residents. This is not just a matter of fashion. In the past, our residents, just walked on the roads and just walked by the paths that we paved. But now they pave some other ways, and they pave their own ways in social networks. So we no longer pave ways for them. They do it for us, and therefore they must actively participate in the management process. But this is certainly we also need a strategy, the general plan, and the program of the utilities infrastructure development. We have already our concept and vision of Chelyabinsk urban sprawl development. And we need to extend it and cover some nearby small cities where we also would like to improve the environment. Besides, there's a separate issue, which is to support the doctors living in smaller cities near our city. Finally, we need to harmonize long-term and short-term priorities. In this case, we will succeed. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me thank you for speaking about city residents. I can add that the city is a vibrant environment, and we need it's dynamically changing, and the residents must be incorporated into the city life dynamics and changes. They must feel responsible and participate in some decision-making, especially in some vital decisions. That's why, and they must know what decisions are taken now, must participate in this process, and some powers must certainly be delegated to city residents. This is what's happening in Samara now. The residents are changing. They feel that they are together with the cities. As to the institutions, I think the model of public and municipal management is going to be widely spread. This is demonstrated by the recent experience of Samara and other cities and the competition of cities and city management teams. This summer, the law on strategic planning was endorsed. It means that there will be relevant strategic documents at all management levels, like on the federal level, at the regional and municipal level, and the implementation will be monitored. We also need to harmonize strategic and tactical and project planning. I think we shouldn't forget about project planning, and this will be an important part of the overall strategy planning process. I only have 1 or 2 minutes to sum up. I have been listening very attentively to all speakers and making notes. I think there are several levels of the problem. The classical bottom level is rotation. The mayors are superb here. They know their problem very well, and they can sing many songs about cleaning away snow. The second level is standards. Many people are now fond of the urban sprawl, and new municipalities appear, or many cities are joined, and so on. However, they often do not analyze whether this is needed or not, whether this is in line with their strategy or not. Or some mayors just try to construct as many kindergartens as possible, but they don't know the real demand. They just try to follow the general federal line. What happens next? The administration and mayors start looking for allies and partners. It's quite important, and one of the reasons is the lack of money. Now the administration realizes that they don't have enough funds, that they can't cope with everything, and they need to do their work in partnership with business. But what's your insight? What is your distant view of the city? What is the city's distant future? I have not heard a word about that from any of you. Let's take Chelyabinsk, for instance. What will happen to its main plant? Probably it's unfriendly in terms of the environment, and you will need to relocate it outside the city. We should not forget, we should not ignore both factors. I mean the capital and the potential, the human potential. The human capital certainly is one thing, and the human potential is another thing. They're certainly interrelated. But the human capital is about performance indicators. But the human potential is about the people's well-being. I know that Tomsk city is very industrial, but I know that you still don't have enough enterprises and not enough workplaces. You need to create new ones. You know that the city competes with Novosibirsk, and the people may leave for Novosibirsk, for Moscow, for other countries like the USA and Israel. I also know that Novosibirsk has its own problems, which started in the 90s. Those were the problems related to some criminal business group. The situation with the science center town also exists, and there are problems with fast funds and many other factors. So all cities face problems like the path dependence and the lack of active residents and so on. But I think the situation with business in Novosibirsk will improve because the business is deeply integrated into the city. I don't think you should borrow and strategies from other places. You always need to consider local specifics, and whether you will succeed or not, well, it depends on many factors. It's the factors like the size of cities, the quality of the human capital, the quality of the human potential, but we always need to love cities and think of their future. Thank you.